Welcome to Wild Cowboy Tales. Before you listen, let me know where you're listening from. In the stark heart of the untamed West, a promise is more binding than any law, and love, when it ignites across divided lands, can be the fiercest battle of all. High above the unforgiving desert floor, a Native American girl hangs between life and death, her fate resting in the hands of a stranger. When rescued, she offers the ultimate vow, a promise of love and marriage to her savior. But in a world rife with prejudice, can such a bond ever truly blossom, or will hatred tear their impossible future apart? Prepare for a tale of breathtaking courage, unwavering devotion, and the desperate fight for a love born from the edge of a cliff. Chapter 1: The Cage on the Mesa. The wind, a relentless sculptor of the Badlands, whipped dust into Caleb Thorne's face, stinging his eyes and caking his parched lips. It tasted of alkali and forgotten promises, much like the life he'd been living. At 30, Caleb was a man carved from the same hard granite as the mountains that hemmed his world, tall, lean, with eyes the color of a stormy sky, usually quick to spot trouble, and equally quick to avoid it. He wasn't a lawman, nor an outlaw, just a drifter, a cowboy with a past he preferred to keep buried beneath the dust of countless trails. His current occupation was a solitary one, tracking a stray herd of wild mustangs, hoping to break them and sell them for enough to keep his belly full and his horse, a sturdy dun named Apache, Chad. He'd ridden far, deep into the less traveled reaches of the Arizona Territory, where the land stretched out like an untamed beast, beautiful and brutal in equal measure. He'd followed a faint trail of hoofprints to the base of the Black Mesa, a towering, flat-topped monolith that jutted defiantly against the vast and forgiving sky. It was a place rumored to hold ancient secrets, and sometimes desperate souls. As he urged Apache up the winding, rocky trail that snaked along the mesa's side, a chilling sound cut through the stillness of the afternoon. Not the howl of a coyote, nor the shriek of an eagle, but a human voice, thin and desperate, laced with profound anguish. He pulled Apache to a sudden halt, straining to hear. It came again, a muffled sob, followed by words that clawed at the very fabric of his soul. "Let me die. Oh, please God, just let me die." Caleb felt a cold dread settle in his gut. This was no ordinary distress. This was pure, unadulterated torment. He spurred Apache forward, his hand instinctively going to the worn Colt on his hip. The trail opened onto the mesa's plateau, a stark, windswept expanse of rock and scrub. And there, in the center of this desolate stage, was a sight that clawed at his conscience and hammered at his resolve to stay out of other people's trouble. A crude, iron cage, barely large enough for a person to stand upright, sat bolted to the rock. And inside, slumped against the rusty bars, was a woman. Her clothes, once fine, were now torn and grimy. Her red-gold hair, a shocking splash of color against the drab landscape, was tangled and matted. Her face, streaked with dirt and tears, was none the less striking. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, and eyes, even in their despair, that burned with a defiant fire. She was young, perhaps no older than 22 or 23, and utterly broken. As Caleb approached, the creak of Apache's saddle leather drew her attention. Her head snapped up, her eyes locking onto his, a flicker of something akin to desperate hope, then a surge of renewed anguish. You're a white man," she choked out, her voice hoarse. "Ruh. Oh, please, you have to help me. Don't let him do this. Don't let him make me." Caleb dismounted, his gaze sweeping the deserted mesa. No sign of guards, no campfires, just the wind whistling through the cage bars. "Who did this to you, ma'am? What in hell's name is going on?" His voice was rough, unaccustomed to such open expressions of shock. Silas Blackwood," she cried, her voice rising in a fresh wave of terror. He trapped me. He wants to marry me, to take my land, my inheritance. Oh, please, I beg you. He's coming back. He's coming for me at sundown. You have to help me." She frantically gripped the bars, her knuckles white. Silas Blackwood. The name sent a shiver down Caleb's spine. Blackwood was a legend, a whispered menace in the saloon, a ruthless land baron and outlaw leader who was slowly, inexorably, carving out an empire in the territory. He was known for his cold ambition, his brutal efficiency, and his uncanny ability to make problems disappear. To cross Silas Blackwood was to invite certain death. Marry you, Caleb repeated, the absurdity of the situation warring with the grim reality of her plight. He's going to force you to marry him. Yes. He says he'll take my ranch, my father's land. He says he'll hang my loyal hands, burn my home, unless I agree. He wants my father's gold claims, too. Oh, please, don't let him. Let me die. Don't make me marry that bastard. Her voice was a desperate, guttural scream, tearing through the stillness, a plea so raw, so utterly agonizing, that it cut through Caleb's years of self-imposed detachment. The words hung in the air, echoing across the desolate mesa. Let me die. Don't make me marry that bastard. The sheer, visceral desperation of her plea was a stark, brutal challenge to his cowboy code, to the quiet honor he lived by, even if he never spoke of it. He couldn't just ride away. He couldn't leave her. He examined the cage. Thick iron bars, securely bolted to the rock. No obvious locks, no hinges he could easily tamper with. It was a crude, brutal testament to Blackwood's twisted will. What's your name, ma'am? Caleb asked, his voice firm, and newfound resolve settling in his gut. Amelia. Amelia Vance, she gasped, her eyes, though filled with tears, now held a spark of desperate hope, clinging to him like a lifeline. My father was Thomas Vance. He owned the Lazy V Ranch. Blackwood wants it all. Amelia Vance, daughter of the powerful but recently deceased rancher, Thomas Vance, whose land holdings were rumored to sit on rich mineral deposits. Blackwood's ambition was clear. A forced marriage to Amelia, a legitimate heir, would give him legal claim to the vast Lazy V Ranch and its hidden wealth, without the mess of outright theft. Caleb's gaze swept the horizon again. The sun was indeed sinking, bleeding streaks of crimson and orange across the sky. Blackwood would be here soon. He didn't have much time. He was one man, against Silas Blackwood and whatever force he commanded. This was a fool's errand, a direct challenge to the most powerful and ruthless man in the territory. But as he looked at Amelia's desperate, pleading face, at the raw terror in her eyes, heard her agonizing plea for death over a forced union with a man she clearly despised, Caleb knew he couldn't turn his back. His drifter's life, his quiet avoidance of trouble, was over. He had stumbled upon a nightmare, and the weight of her suffering, the clarity of her desperate plea, demanded his intervention. Don't worry, Amelia Vance, Caleb said, his voice low and steady, a promise in its tone. You won't be marrying that bastard. Not today. Not ever. I'll get you out of here. The words hung in the air, a reckless vow against a powerful foe. Caleb drew his Colt, its familiar weight a cold comfort in his hand, his eyes scanning the surrounding terrain. He had no idea how he would free her, or what fresh hell awaited him. But one thing was certain, his solitary life had just become entangled in a desperate fight, a fight for a woman's freedom. And perhaps, for his own soul. The sun bled across the mesa, and the shadow of Silas Blackwood loomed large, but in Caleb Thorne's heart, a defiant spark had just been ignited. Chapter 2, A Reckless Promise. The last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the black mesa into the chilling embrace of twilight. Caleb Thorne, his heart hammering against his ribs, stared at the formidable iron cage, and back at Amelia Vance, her face streaked with dirt and tears, her eyes wide with desperate hope. Silas Blackwood was coming. He had mere minutes, perhaps less. How is this thing bolted? Caleb demanded, his voice rough with urgency, circling the cage. He saw the heavy iron stakes driven deep into the rock, reinforced by crude but strong welds. No lock he could pick, no hinge he could break with brute force. It was a prison designed for a specific, brutal purpose. Amelia struggled against the bars, her voice a raw whisper. He welded it. He said no one could get me out. He said I would learn my place. Caleb swore under his breath. He tried prying at the bolts with his bowie knife, but the blade merely skittered off the hardened metal. He kicked at the bars, the dull clang echoing mockingly across the mesa. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prick at the edges of his resolve. He was a man of action, but this was a cage built by a monster, designed to hold a spirit captive. Then, his gaze fell on Apache, his sturdy dun. The horse was strong, accustomed to pulling heavy loads. An idea, reckless and desperate, sparked in his mind. Apache, he shouted, grabbing his lariat from his saddle. Hold on, Amelia. This is going to be rough. He quickly fashioned a loop in his lariat, tossing it over the top of the cage, securing it around the strongest crossbar. He then tied the other end to Apache's saddle horn. "Stand back," he yelled to Amelia, even though there was little room in the cage. He mounted Apache, gripping the reins tight. "Pull, Apache, pull," Caleb urged, digging his spurs into the horse's flanks. Apache lunged forward, muscles straining, the rope snapping taut. The cage groaned, the bolts screeching as they were pulled against the rock. With a desperate heave, Apache pulled again, and with a deafening screech of tormented metal and groaning rock, one of the thick bolts holding the cage finally ripped free from its mooring, sending a shower of sparks and rock fragments flying. Amelia cried out, half in fear, half in a sudden, fragile hope. But the cage was only partially dislodged. It wobbled precariously, still held fast by the remaining bolts. "Again, boy! Again!" Caleb shouted, urging Apache to pull with all his might. The horse strained, whinnying in protest, his hooves digging into the loose rock. The remaining bolts groaned, cracks spider-webbing around their bases. With a final, agonizing crack, the last bolts gave way, and the entire cage ripped free, tumbling sideways with a deafening clang of tortured iron. Amelia screamed, the cage pitching wildly, then settled with a final, jarring thud. Dusty leaped from Apache, rushing to the shattered cage door, now twisted and bent. He tore at the mangled bars, pulling them apart with raw, desperate strength. "Get out, now," he commanded, pulling her out of the gaping hole. Amelia stumbled into his arms, weak and trembling, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and overwhelming relief. Just as they cleared the cage, a distant rumble echoed across the mesa. Horses, many of them. Silas Blackwood. "They're here," Amelia gasped, clutching his arm, her eyes darting to the darkening horizon. "Mount up. We run," Caleb ordered, pulling her towards Apache. He helped her onto the saddle, then swung up behind her, grabbing the reins. "Hang on," he spurred Apache, racing across the flat mesa, leaving the shattered cage as a defiant monument to their escape. Behind them, the rumble grew louder, accompanied by the shouts of men. Blackwood's men, a dark wave against the twilight sky, burst onto the mesa, their torches flaring. They're getting away." Silas Blackwood's voice, cold and ruthless, carried on the wind. "After them. Don't let them escape." The chase began, a desperate race against the fading light and relentless pursuit. Caleb pushed Apache hard, the horse's powerful strides eating up the ground. Amelia clung to him, her face pressed against his back, occasionally glancing over her shoulder at the rapidly closing gap between them and their pursuers. "This way," Amelia suddenly cried, her voice still hoarse, but clear. She pointed towards a treacherous, narrow ravine, barely wide enough for a horse to squeeze through. "My father showed me. It's a hidden path. Blackwood's men won't know it." Caleb didn't hesitate. He veered Apache sharply, plunging into the narrow, rocky defile. The going was rough, the passage barely wide enough, but it offered cover, a momentary escape from the open mesa. Behind them, he heard Blackwood's curses, the frustrated shouts of his men as they hesitated at the ravine's entrance. They rode through the night, Amelia, despite her exhaustion, proving an invaluable guide, leading him through a labyrinth of canyons and hidden trails known only to her family. During a brief respite, huddled in a small, concealed cave, Amelia recounted the full horror of her ordeal. "My father, Thomas Vance, he died suddenly, a month ago," she explained, her voice trembling. "Blackwood appeared, claiming he held a debt against my father, a debt no one knew about. He said he would seize the Lazy V, burn it to the ground, hang my loyal hands, unless I agreed to marry him. He wants my father's gold claims. The golden spur mine, it's hidden, a secret my father found, and only I know its location." Her eyes, even in the dim light, burned with a fierce resolve. "He wants it all, and he thinks a forced marriage will make it legal. Make me his slave." Caleb listened, his face grim. Silas Blackwood wasn't just a ruthless land baron, he was a calculating predator, using twisted legalities and brute force to steal a woman's entire legacy. Amelia's plea, "Let me die, don't make me marry that bastard," echoed in his mind, cementing his resolve. He had promised to get her out, and now, he promised to fight for her freedom, for her right to her own life, her own land. "You won't marry him, Amelia," Caleb vowed, his voice low and firm, his hand gripping hers. "Not today. Not ever. I won't let him take your ranch. Or your freedom. We'll fight him, and we'll win." Amelia looked at him, her eyes filled with a desperate, burgeoning hope, and something else, a deep, almost primal trust. He was a stranger, a drifter, yet he had risked everything for her. And he was a man who kept his word. The promise, made in the shadow of the cage, now felt like a lifeline, pulling them into a future neither of them could yet fully comprehend, but one they would face together. The chase had begun, and with it, a reckless promise had bound them forever. Chapter 3: The Hunter and the Hunted. The relentless pursuit of Silas Blackwood was a cold, constant breath on their necks. Caleb and Amelia, two fugitives from a monstrous injustice, navigated the harsh Arizona landscape with a desperate urgency, every rustle of dry brush, every distant cloud of dust, a potential harbinger of discovery. They were the hunted, their freedom a fragile thing against Blackwood's immense power and unforgiving reach. Life on the run was a brutal teacher. They rationed their meager supplies, sharing mouthfuls of dry jerky and precious sips of water from their canteens. Amelia, though still weak from her ordeal and the physical trauma, showed a remarkable resilience. Her knowledge of the arid terrain, gleaned from years of riding the Lazy V with her father, proved invaluable. She found hidden springs that Caleb, for all his experience, would have missed, identified edible dessert plants, and read the subtle signs of animal trails, helping them evade Blackwood's seasoned trackers. Caleb, in turn, became her shield. His sharp senses, honed by years of solitary living, kept them one step ahead of danger. He hunted small game with his rifle, carefully conserving ammunition, and taught Amelia the art of silent movement, of blending into the shadows. He doctored her scrapes and bruises, his touch gentle, his concern unwavering. He was a man of action, resourceful and inflappable, a rock in the shifting sands of their predicament. The shared hardship, the constant proximity, and the unspoken threat of Blackwood's vengeance, forged an unbreakable bond between them. Amelia, initially guarded and terrified, slowly began to shed her fear, finding solace and strength in Caleb's unwavering presence. She saw beyond the rough cowboy exterior, discovering a man of profound honor, quiet compassion, and fierce integrity. He was not just her rescuer, he was her protector, her confidant, her unexpected anchor in a storm. One evening, huddled in a small, remote cave as a cold desert wind whistled through the entrance, Amelia looked at Caleb, her eyes softened by the flickering light of their small fire. "My father, he always told me to trust my instincts, to know a man by his actions, not his words. You have shown me more kindness, more courage, than any man I have ever known, even when I had nothing to offer." Caleb met her gaze, his heart stirring with an emotion he hadn't known since his youth. "You offered me your trust, Amelia. And that's worth more than all the gold on the Lazy V." He reached out, his calloused hand gently touching her cheek, brushing away a stray tear. The simple, tender gesture was a universal way from the brutal world that pursued them. Their initial attraction, a spark ignited by shared peril, deepened into a profound affection, a forbidden romance blooming under the most dangerous of circumstances. They spoke of their pasts, of their dreams. Caleb, a man who rarely spoke of himself, found himself confiding in Amelia about his drifter's life, the loneliness, the quiet yearning for a place to call home. Amelia, in turn, spoke of her father, of their shared love for the Lazy V, of her hopes for its future, a future that now seemed impossibly distant. Meanwhile, Blackwood's pursuit was relentless, a chilling testament to his power and his singular focus. They found evidence of his presence everywhere, fresh tracks of his distinctive horses, the occasional abandoned campfire, the menacing silence of the desert after his men had passed. He offered bounties for their capture, dead or alive, spreading rumors in distant towns that Caleb was a dangerous outlaw who had kidnapped Amelia. He sent out notorious trackers, men with cold eyes and colder hearts, who moved with a terrifying efficiency. One tense afternoon, hidden in a rock overhang, Caleb and Amelia watched as a small detachment of Blackwood's men, led by a ruthless lieutenant named Razor Jack, rode through the canyon below them. Razor Jack was known for his cruelty, his unwavering loyalty to Blackwood, and his terrifying tracking skills. They were barely a stone's throw away, their voices carrying on the wind, their eyes scanning every shadow. Caleb felt Amelia's hand tighten in his, her fear palpable, but her resolve unbroken. "He won't stop," Amelia whispered, her voice tight. "He never stops until he gets what he wants." "Then we won't stop running," Caleb replied, his jaw set, his gaze hardening. "And we won't stop fighting. Not until he's beaten." Amidst the constant peril, their love became their strongest shield. They were two souls, profoundly drawn to each other, their promise now one of unwavering devotion, a conscious choice to face the impossible together. Their shared purpose, the desperate fight for Amelia's freedom and for justice against Blackwood, intertwined with the blossoming of their hearts, creating a bond forged in fire, strong enough to withstand the relentless pursuit of the hunter and the agonizing flight of the hunted. The stakes were higher than ever, but so too was the love that defied the darkness. Chapter 4: Shadows of Dry Gulch. The relentless pursuit of Silas Blackwood and his men, spearheaded by the ruthless Razor Jack, began to take its toll. Caleb and Amelia, exhausted and dwindling on supplies, knew they couldn't simply outrun them forever. They needed respite, resources, and, crucially, information. Their decision, desperate and dangerous, was to seek temporary sanctuary in Dry Gulch, a frontier town infamous for its rough edges and its uneasy mix of hopeful settlers and desperate outcasts. "Dry Gulch is a snake pit," Caleb warned Amelia as they rode towards the distant haze of the town, full of desperate men and Blackwood's eyes. "But it's also a place where a man can disappear, if he's clever enough. And we need to resupply." Amelia nodded, her face grim. "My father always avoided Dry Gulch. Said it was where honest men went to lose their souls." They rode into Dry Gulch under the cloak of a late afternoon sun, the dusty main street teeming with a motley collection of cowboys, miners, gamblers, and saloon girls. The air was thick with the scent of stale whiskey, horse manure, and unwashed bodies. They dismounted in a secluded alley behind the livery, hoping to remain unnoticed. Caleb, ever cautious, quickly secured Apache, then led Amelia towards a small, nondescript boarding house, hoping to find a room where they could rest and plan. As they walked, Caleb kept his eyes peeled, noticing the subtle signs of Blackwood's influence. The saloon, the general store, even the sheriff's office, they all seemed to bear the invisible mark of Silas Blackwood. A heavily armed man with a distinctive scar sat on the porch of the saloon, his gaze sweeping the street, his presence a palpable threat. They managed to secure a cramped, dusty room at the boarding house, paying in cash for a week, hoping the anonymity would buy them time. But the relief was fleeting. As Caleb ventured out for supplies, he quickly realized the full, suffocating extent of Blackwood's power. The general store owner, a nervous man with darting eyes, refused to sell Caleb any substantial supplies, muttering excuses about inventory shortages. At the blacksmith, his request for a new shoe for Apache was met with a curt "too busy." Even the local doctor, a grizzled old man named Doc Miller, seemed wary, offering only the barest of medical advice for Amelia's lingering arm pain. Blackwood had Dry Gulch in an iron grip. Caleb returned to Amelia, his face grim. "He's got this town choked, Amelia. Every merchant, every business, they're either indebted to him or terrified of him. It's worse than I thought." Amelia listened, her eyes filled with a new despair. "He owns everything, doesn't he? He controls everything." "Not everything," Caleb countered, his jaw set. "And not yet. There's always someone who resents a bully, someone who chafes under a boot. We just need to find them." Their luck, or perhaps fate, took an unexpected turn in a dimly lit corner of the town's only respectable saloon. Caleb, nursing a beer, overheard a grizzled old prospector named Jedediah, nursing a bottle of cheap whiskey, grumbling loudly about Blackwood. "That damn Blackwood," Jedediah slurred, his words thick with alcohol and resentment. "He stole my claim. He cheated my partner. Says I ain't got no proof, but I know what I saw. And he's got the sheriff in his pocket. The whole damn town is rotten with him." Caleb, sensing a potential ally, cautiously approached Jedediah. He bought the old man another drink, and slowly, carefully, began to elicit more information. Jedediah, fueled by liquor and a burning sense of injustice, poured out a torrent of accusations against Blackwood: stolen claims, rigged land deals, murdered partners. All covered up by a corrupt sheriff and a terrified town. "He's after something big, boy," Jedediah whispered, his eyes narrowing. "Bigger than just cattle." Heard whispers of gold. A legendary claim. On the lazy V he looked at Caleb, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. You seem mighty interested in Blackwood, stranger. You got a bone to pick with him too. Caleb looked at Amelia, who had quietly joined them, her presence a silent testament to their shared plight. More than a bone, old man. Blackwood wants to force this woman to marry him, to steal her inheritance, the lazy the fifth, and the gold claim her father left her. Jedediah stared at Amelia, then at Caleb, his face slowly transforming from suspicion to a grim understanding. Amelia Vance. Thomas Vance's daughter. So that's it. The Golden Spur. He's after the Golden Spur mine. The Golden Spur mine. Amelia's eyes widened in shock. My father, he never told anyone about that name. Only me. Jedediah nodded. It was a legend, whispered among prospectors. A lost gold claim on the Lazy V, richer than any man could dream. Thomas Vance found it, kept it secret. He was a smart man, Thomas. He wouldn't let Blackwood get his hands on it. The pieces began to fall into place. Blackwood's motive wasn't just the Lazy V ranch, it was the hidden Golden Spur mine, a source of immense wealth. The forced marriage was a means to a much more lucrative end. Caleb looked at Amelia, then back at Jedediah. You said Blackwood stole your claim. You said you had proof. Jedediah hesitated, then, driven by his hatred for Blackwood and a dawning sense of justice, nodded. I got a ledger. My partner's. It details Blackwood's dirty dealings, the bribes, the threats. It's hidden, but it won't do much good. No one in this town dares cross Blackwood. We will, Caleb stated, his voice firm, his gaze meeting Amelia's. We will cross him, and we will expose him. We'll get that ledger, old man, and we'll use it to fight him. Amelia, her face resolute, gripped Caleb's hand. The discovery of the Golden Spur mine, and the confirmation of Blackwood's true, avaricious motives, brought a terrifying clarity to their desperate situation. But it also brought a renewed sense of purpose. Their love, forged in fire, was now intertwined with a fight for justice, for truth, and for the very soul of the territory. Dry Gulch might be under Blackwood's shadow, but in Caleb and Amelia, a defiant spark had just ignited, ready to challenge the darkness. Chapter 5. Unraveling the Web. The cramped, dusty room in the Dry Gulch boarding house, once a meager sanctuary, now buzzed with a newfound purpose. The revelation of the Golden Spur mine and Jedediah's hidden ledger had transformed Caleb and Amelia's flight into a desperate counteroffensive. Blackwood wasn't just a ruthless land baron, he was the head of a sophisticated criminal enterprise, and they now held the key to unraveling his intricate web of corruption. The Golden Spur, Amelia murmured, tracing invisible lines on the dusty table with her finger. My father always said it would be his legacy. He kept it so secret, even from me, until his last days. He knew Blackwood would kill for it. Caleb nodded grimly. And he's using you to get it. A forced marriage makes it all legal. No one questions a husband's claim to his wife's inheritance. He looked at Jedediah, the old prospector, who sat hunched over a cup of stale coffee, his eyes sharp despite his age. That ledger, Jedediah. Where is it hidden? Jedediah hesitated, glancing nervously at the door. Dangerous, boy. That ledger, it details everything. Bribes to the sheriff, threats against honest folk, even how he stole my partner's claim, and then my partner disappeared. If Blackwood ever found out I had it, I'd be swinging from the nearest tree. Then we have to get it, and use it. Before he can do that, Amelia interjected, her voice firm. My father trusted you, Jedediah. He would have wanted you to fight Blackwood. Jedediah, swayed by Amelia's impassioned plea and his own burning hatred for Blackwood, finally relented. It's hidden in my old claim shack, just outside of town, near the hanging tree ridge, in a false bottom of an old water barrel. But Blackwood's men, they watch that area, especially Razor Jack. Razor Jack. The name sent a shiver down Caleb's spine. Blackwood's most ruthless lieutenant, a man known for his cold efficiency and terrifying tracking skills. Getting that ledger would be a perilous task. Caleb and Amelia, now a true team, meticulously planned their raid. Amelia, using her intimate knowledge of her father's affairs, recalled details that connected Blackwood to specific dates and transactions mentioned in the ledger. She even remembered a subtle, coded message her father had used in his private papers, which, if combined with the ledger, could expose Blackwood's entire operation. Their investigation quickly put them in direct peril. As Caleb ventured out for a recon of Jedediah's claimed shack, he was spotted by a pair of Blackwood's thugs. A tense, silent chase through the narrow alleys of Dry Gulch ensued. Caleb narrowly evaded capture, slipping away into the maze of back streets, but the incident confirmed their fears. Blackwood was aware of their activities, and his network of spies in Dry Gulch was pervasive. Back in their room, Amelia patched up a scrape on Caleb's arm, her touch gentle and concerned. "He's tightening his grip," she whispered, her eyes filled with worry. "He knows we're looking for something. He's going to come for us." "Let him come," Caleb replied, his jaw set, pulling her closer. The scent of her hair, the soft warmth of her body against his, was a powerful anchor in the rising storm. "We're ready for him." The constant danger, the shared purpose, and the profound intimacy of their desperate fight deepened their love beyond anything either had ever imagined. They spoke of their fears, their hopes, their dreams for a future that now seemed impossibly distant, yet tantalizingly within reach. They acknowledged their feelings openly, their promise now one of love, not just a vow of rescue. One evening, as they huddled together, planning their next move, Amelia looked at Caleb, her eyes shining with tears. "I was so afraid, Caleb, so completely alone. And then you came. You saved me. And now I love you. More than I ever thought possible." Caleb held her close, pressing a kiss into her hair. "And I love you, Amelia Vance. More than this land, more than my own life. I swear it." His promise, once made on the edge of a cliff, now resonated with the undeniable truth of his heart. They knew the risks were immense. To challenge Silas Blackwood was to challenge a force that had brought entire towns to their knees. But they also knew that their love, their shared commitment to justice, was a force that even Blackwood could not comprehend. They were no longer just two fugitives. They were a united front, armed with truth and love, ready to unravel Blackwood's web of lies, no matter the cost. The stage was set for a desperate gambit, a fight for more than just a ranch or a gold mine, but for freedom, for justice, and for their very right to love. Chapter 6: A Desperate Gambit. The stolen ledger, now meticulously examined in the cramped room of the Dry Gulch boarding house, was a damning indictment of Silas Blackwood's empire. It detailed a horrifying litany of crimes, fraudulent land claims, stolen mineral rights, bribed officials from Dry Gulch to the territorial capital, and a chilling record of disputes resolved, a euphemism for murders disguised as accidents or Apache raids. The ledger also revealed Blackwood's most immediate plan, a massive land grab, using forged documents and a corrupt judge to seize control of several key water sources, effectively strangling the independent ranchers of the territory and forcing them into submission. "He's planning to corner the water," Amelia murmured, her face grim, her finger tracing a shaded area on a map Blackwood had drawn in the ledger. "Then he'll own everything. And everyone." Caleb's jaw tightened. "We have to expose him. All of it. Not just for your ranch, Amelia, but for everyone he's threatened." Their plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. They would publicly expose Blackwood at his own victory celebration, a lavish, carefully orchestrated ball in the largest hall in Dry Gulch, where he intended to announce his new land acquisitions and solidify his image as a legitimate power broker. It was a high-stakes strategy, aiming to hit Blackwood where he was most vulnerable, his reputation and his carefully constructed illusion of legality. "We need more than just the ledger and Jedediah's testimony," Amelia insisted. "We need people to stand with us. People who are willing to speak out, who have also suffered under Blackwood." Gathering support was a perilous task. The fear of Blackwood ran deep in Dry Gulch. Caleb, using his quiet charisma and appealing to the ingrained cowboy code of justice, slowly managed to convince a few principled but terrified townsfolk. Old man Jedediah, fueled by liquor and righteous anger, agreed to testify. Sarah, the schoolteacher, a woman with a quiet courage, secretly organized a small group of merchants and homesteaders who had suffered under Blackwood's tyranny. Elias, the grizzled prospector, still grieving his son, offered his own testimony of Blackwood's false flag tactics. Their plan involved a precise timing, disrupting Blackwood's celebration, presenting the ledger, and having their witnesses step forward, all orchestrated to catch Blackwood off guard and before his corrupt allies could intervene. The tension in their small room was almost unbearable. They knew they were facing down a powerful, ruthless opponent who would stop at nothing to silence them. They spent hours meticulously going over every detail, rehearsing every step, preparing for every contingency. One night, as a dust storm raged outside, rattling the windows of their room, Amelia looked at Caleb, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and profound love. "We might not make it out of this, Caleb. Blackwood, he's too powerful. He'll kill us." Caleb pulled her close, holding her tight, his heart pounding a desperate rhythm against hers. "Then we'll die fighting, Amelia. But we won't let him win. Not this way." He cupped her face in his hands, his gaze searching hers. "I know this isn't how we planned our future, but if this is all we have, then it's enough. I love you, Amelia Vance. More than words can say. More than any gold, any land." Amelia's eyes welled with tears. "And I love you, Caleb Thorne. My rescuer. My strength. My husband, in my heart, if nowhere else." In that moment, amidst the howling wind and the looming threat of death, they exchanged their own vows, personal and profound. It was a promise of enduring love, a commitment forged not in a church, but in the crucible of desperation, a silent testament to their unbreakable bond. They kissed, a desperate, passionate embrace that spoke of courage, of fear, and of a love that defied all odds. Their plan, a desperate gambit for freedom and justice, was set. They were ready to challenge Blackwood, to tear down his empire, even if it meant sacrificing their own lives. They knew the risks, but they also knew that their love, their shared commitment to truth, was a force that even Silas Blackwood, with all his power, could not comprehend. The final act was upon them, and they would face it together, their love a defiant flame against the encroaching darkness. Chapter 7: Betrayal and Near Misses. The night of Silas Blackwood's supposed victory celebration descended upon Dry Gulch with a heavy, oppressive air. The grand hall, usually reserved for circuit preachers or rare traveling shows, was transformed into a lavish spectacle, adorned with stolen finery, bustling with intimidated merchants and uneasy ranchers. Blackwood, radiating an aura of dark power, held court at the head table, his eyes gleaming with anticipated triumph. Caleb and Amelia, disguised as a prosperous couple from a neighboring territory, slipped into the hall, their hearts pounding. They carried the damning ledger, hidden in a false bottom of Amelia's elegant reticule, their eyes scanning for their allies. Grizz, Silas, Elias, and Sarah were strategically placed throughout the room, ready to act on Caleb's signal. The plan was set. As Blackwood began his triumphant speech, Amelia would confront him, presenting the ledger, backed by the testimonies of their allies. The element of surprise was crucial, but Blackwood, a predator to his core, had anticipated a move. Just as Vance raised his glass to toast his new acquisitions, a chillingly familiar voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd. "There? The traitor and his woman." Caleb and Amelia spun around. Standing near the entrance, a sneer on his cruel face, was Razor Jack, Blackwood's ruthless lieutenant. And beside him, pale and trembling, was Clem, the young ranch hand who had discovered Tala at Horizon's edge. He had been bribed, turned into Blackwood's informant, betraying Dusty's trust for a fistful of Blackwood's tainted gold. "Clem, you bastard!" Grizz roared, his face contorted in fury, drawing his pistol. Chaos erupted. Vance's men, already positioned throughout the hall, drew their weapons, their eyes fixed on Caleb and Amelia. The element of surprise was lost. "Seize them!" Vance thundered, his face a mask of triumphant malice. "And don't forget the ledger. That little whore has it." A brutal ambush. Caleb immediately grabbed Amelia, pulling her towards the nearest exit as bullets began to fly. Grizz, Silas, Elias, and Sarah, though outnumbered, fought valiantly, providing covering fire, creating a desperate diversion. Grizz roared like a bear, his shotgun barking, dropping to Vance's men. Silas, his old prospector's cunning surfacing, overturned a heavy table, creating a barrier. Caleb and Amelia scrambled through the panicked crowd, dodging bullets, the sounds of gunshots and terrified screams echoing around them. A bullet whizzed past Caleb's head, nicking his ear. Amelia stumbled, crying out, as a thug grabbed her arm. Caleb spun, his Colt a blur, striking the man with the butt of his pistol, sending him sprawling. "The ledger. Get the ledger," Vance's voice, cold and furious, cut through the din. As they neared the back exit, Razor Jack burst through, his eyes gleaming with murderous intent, a wicked bowie knife glinting in his hand. He lunged at Amelia, attempting to grab her, to seize the ledger. Caleb, putting himself between them, engaged Razor Jack in a brutal, hand-to-hand struggle. Razor Jack was fast, vicious, and skilled with a blade. Caleb fought with a desperate ferocity, fueled by his love for Amelia, but he was losing ground, his arm taking a deep cut from the knife. Amelia screamed, tears streaming down her face, seeing his blood. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, she pulled the small derringer she had secretly acquired, firing it wildly at Razor Jack. The tiny bullet grazed his arm, enough to distract him. Caleb seized the moment, slamming his knee into Razor Jack's gut, sending him staggering back. "Run, Amelia! Run!" he gasped, pushing her through the exit. They burst out into the alley, pursued by a hail of gunfire. Apache, Caleb's loyal horse, was waiting, having been tethered nearby by Silas as part of their plan. Caleb quickly helped Amelia mount, then swung up behind her, blood dripping from his arm. They spurred Apache, galloping into the night, leaving behind the cacophony of gunshots and the screams of the terrified townsfolk. Blackwood's victory was complete. Their plan had failed, their allies were scattered, and Caleb was injured. They rode through the night, Amelia clutching Caleb, her face pressed against his back, tears mingling with the dust. Days later, holed up in a remote, abandoned mine shaft, tending to Caleb's festering arm wound, they received the grim news from a frightened messenger from Dry Gulch. Blackwood had announced the successful capture of the outlaws who tried to disrupt his plans. He had seized their meager supplies, arrested their remaining allies, those who hadn't escaped or been killed, and, with a chilling display of power, had publicly declared the rescheduled forced marriage between himself and Amelia Vance to take place in a week. It was a public display of his complete triumph, cementing his victory in the eyes of the terrified territory. The future looked bleak. Their desperate gambit had ended in crushing defeat. The broken promise of freedom now seemed like a distant, impossible dream. Chapter 8: Unexpected Allies, Resurgent Hope. Despair, a cold, insidious enemy, settled over Caleb and Amelia in the depths of the abandoned mine shaft. Caleb's arm, deeply cut by Razor Jack's knife, was inflamed and festering, his fever rising. Amelia, though physically recovered, battled a profound sense of guilt and hopelessness. Their plan had failed spectacularly, their allies were scattered or captured, and Blackwood's victory seemed absolute. The forced marriage, a week away, loomed like a gallows in their minds. "He won, Caleb," Amelia whispered one feverish night, tears streaming down her face. "He won. I should have just let him kill me on the mesa. Then you wouldn't be like this. You wouldn't be ruined." Caleb, his voice rough with pain and weakness, squeezed her hand. "Never, Amelia. Never. He hasn't won. Not as long as we still breathe. Not as long as we still fight." His love for her, a fierce, protective flame, was the only thing keeping him from succumbing to the encroaching darkness. Just as their supplies dwindled and Caleb's fever worsened, a soft scraping sound echoed from the mine entrance. Amelia instinctively drew Caleb's pistol, her heart pounding. A shadow fell across the entrance, and a voice, surprisingly familiar, called out, "Dusty, Amelia, are you in there?" It was Jedediah, the old prospector, his face grim but his eyes holding a glimmer of fierce loyalty. He was accompanied by Silas, the trapper, and surprisingly, Sarah, the schoolteacher, her small frame radiating a quiet courage. They had escaped the chaos of the rally and, guided by Jedediah's knowledge of the hidden trails, had tracked Caleb and Amelia. "Jedediah," Amelia cried, rushing to him, a wave of relief washing over her. "Easy, girl," Jedediah rasped, seeing Caleb's condition. "He's bad. We got to move him." They tended to Caleb, with Sarah, who had some basic medical knowledge, helping to clean and re-bandage his arm, applying medicinal herbs. Silas brought fresh water and food, small mercies in their desperate situation. "Blackwood, he's got everyone convinced you're dead," Jedediah explained, his voice low. "He announced it. Says he found your bodies after the shootout. He's reveling in it. And he's planning the wedding for high noon next Saturday. A public spectacle. He thinks he's won," Amelia whispered, her eyes burning with renewed fury. "He thinks he has," Silas added, his voice grim. "But some of us, we ain't so easily fooled." Jedediah, he got a message out to a federal marshal, a man named Agent Sterling. Word is, he's been quietly investigating Blackwood for months, but he needed proof. Now, he's got it. From Jedediah's ledger. The boys managed to snatch it back during the chaos. The news, a desperate lifeline in their sea of despair, invigorated Caleb. Agent Sterling, he rasped, his voice weak but resolute. He's the key. We have to reach him. Their new allies revealed a secret network of disillusioned townsfolk and small ranchers who, tired of Blackwood's tyranny, were willing to fight, but needed a leader, a symbol of hope. They had been secretly gathering information, resources, and even a few weapons. They're scared, Dusty, Grizz explained, having arrived with Jedediah and Silas. But they're desperate. They see what Blackwood's doing to this territory. They just need someone to stand up. Caleb looked at Amelia, then at his loyal, grizzled foreman, at the determined faces of their unexpected allies. He saw not just fear, but a flicker of resolute hope, a quiet defiance that Blackwood could never extinguish. Their love, once a personal battle, had now become a beacon for an entire community. Then we give them a leader, Caleb declared, his voice gaining strength. We give them hope. We show them the truth. Vance wants to make a public spectacle of his triumph. Then we'll turn it into his downfall. Amelia, her face set, gripped Caleb's hand. The despair began to recede, replaced by a fierce determination. They were battered, bruised, and outgunned, but they were not broken. They had powerful new allies, undeniable proof, and a love that had defied every attempt to shatter it. The fight for Amelia's freedom, for the Golden Spur Mine, was now a fight to bring down Blackwood's entire criminal empire and restore justice to the territory. The darkness was still vast, but a resurgent hope, fueled by love and a renewed promise, had just ignited in the heart of the Wild West. The stage was set for the final showdown. Chapter 9, High Noon in Blackwood's Keep. The week leading up to Silas Blackwood's forced marriage ceremony was a whirlwind of desperate preparation and clandestine movements. Blackwood, believing Caleb and Amelia dead, reveled in his perceived triumph, orchestrating a lavish spectacle in his heavily fortified ranch, now truly Blackwood's Keep. He intended the marriage to be a public declaration of his absolute dominion over the Lazy the Fifth and the entire territory. Meanwhile, Caleb and Amelia, with their burgeoning alliance, worked tirelessly. Agent Sterling, the incorruptible federal marshal, proved to be a formidable ally. He had meticulously gathered his own evidence against Blackwood, but he lacked the final, damning piece's stolen ledger and the testimony of Amelia, the rightful heir. Their combined resources formed a powerful force. The plan was a daring raid, coinciding with the peak of the wedding ceremony. They would hit Blackwood's Keep from multiple angles. The federal marshals, led by Sterling, would launch a frontal assault, while Caleb, Amelia, Grizz, Silas, Jedediah, Sarah, and their growing band of courageous townsfolk would infiltrate through a hidden, less guarded entrance, aiming to disrupt the ceremony, expose Blackwood publicly, and free any prisoners. The day of the wedding dawned under a sky of unsettling calm. Blackwood's Keep, usually a bastion of silent menace, now bustled with activity, decorated for a celebration of tyranny. Caleb, his arm still bandaged but his resolve unwavering, stood with Amelia, both dressed in practical, dark clothing, ready for battle. Their allies, armed with rifles and a fierce sense of justice, gathered around them. "This is it," Caleb said, his gaze sweeping over each determined face. "Remember the plan. We hit hard, we hit fast. We expose him, and we bring down his empire." He looked at Amelia, his eyes filled with love and unwavering commitment. "You won't be marrying that bastard today, Amelia. I promise." Amelia gripped his hand, her own eyes blazing with fierce determination. "And you will get your justice, Caleb Thorne. I promise." As the mock ceremony reached its peak, with Blackwood, a sinister smile on his face, reaching for Amelia's hand to stand in, as he believed Amelia to be dead, Agent Sterling's marshals burst through the main gate, their shouts of federal marshals, "Lay down your arms," echoing through the keep. Simultaneously, Caleb and his group stormed the side entrance, surprising Blackwood's guards. Gunfire erupted, mingling with the terrified screams of the assembled guests. The keep, a scene of forced celebration, transformed into a chaotic battlefield. Caleb fought with a desperate ferocity, protecting Amelia, his promise a burning fire in his heart. Grizz roared, his shotgun barking, laying waste to Blackwood's thugs. Silas and Jedediah, old prospectors with surprising resilience, fought alongside Sarah, the schoolteacher, who, with a pistol in hand, defended her frightened students who had been forced to attend. Amelia, no longer a captive, actively participated, her intellect and courage proving as potent as any weapon. She located the hidden strongboxes where Blackwood kept his ill-gotten gains and crucial documents, providing vital intelligence to Agent Sterling. She directly confronted Vance's terrified stand-in bride, reassuring her and calling on the few principled townsfolk to rise up. The battle raged. Blackwood, seeing his empire crumbling around him, raged like a trapped beast. He fought with a desperate, brutal cunning, his eyes fixed on Amelia, the true prize he refused to relinquish. He faced off against Caleb in a brutal, personal duel amidst the chaos of the keep. "You ruined everything, Thorn," Blackwood snarled, his eyes wild, his movements surprisingly agile. "You took her from me, and you'll pay for it." Caleb met his fury with a cold and wavering resolve. "You tried to steal her life, Blackwood, her land, her freedom, and you'll pay for that." The duel was a blur of fists, knives, and gunshots. Blackwood, ruthless and cunning, fought to the last, but he was ultimately no match for Caleb's skill, his honor, and unwavering love that fueled his every move. Caleb disarmed him, then with a powerful punch, knocked Blackwood unconscious, ending his reign of terror. Justice, bloody and hard-won, prevailed. Blackwood's keep was secured, his thugs rounded up, and his vast criminal enterprise brought to its knees. Agent Sterling, though grim, shook Caleb's hand. "You did it, Miller. You brought him down, and you saved this territory." Caleb, his body aching, his face bruised, looked at Amelia. She rushed into his arms, tears streaming down her face, but her eyes shone with triumph and an unshakable love. They held each other amidst the chaos, their promise unbroken, their love victorious. The fight for Amelia's freedom, born from a desperate plea in an iron cage, had culminated in Blackwood's fall, and in its wake, the promise of a truly free future. Chapter 10: Freedom and a New Horizon. In the wake of Silas Blackwood's downfall, the Arizona Territory slowly began to breathe again. His criminal empire, built on fear and corruption, crumbled swiftly. His corrupt allies were exposed, his vast land claims invalidated, and justice, though paid for in blood and sacrifice, finally prevailed. The legend of Silas Blackwood, once a whispered menace, transformed into a cautionary tale. Amelia Vance, now officially declared free and the rightful heir to the vast Lazy V Ranch, stood tall and resolute. The iron cage, a brutal symbol of her captivity, was dismantled, its rusted bars melted down, a testament to her liberation. She, alongside Caleb, oversaw the painstaking process of rebuilding, transforming the Lazy V into a beacon of honesty, fairness, and prosperity. They worked tirelessly to heal the wounds Blackwood had inflicted, creating a just community where the rights of every rancher and settler were respected. Caleb Thorne, no longer a lone drifter, found his true home not in a saddle, but in the heart of Amelia Vance and the land they fought for. Their relationship, forged in the fires of adversity, blossomed into a profound and unbreakable love. Their shared experiences, the desperate chase, the unwavering loyalty, the near-death encounters all had woven an intricate tapestry of devotion that no external force could ever unravel. One glorious morning, as the sun painted the Lazy V Ranch in hues of gold and amber, Caleb knelt before Amelia, not as her rescuer, but as her equal. He held out a simple, silver ring, gleaming softly in the sunlight. "Amelia Vance," Caleb began, his voice thick with emotion, his eyes, once guarded, now filled with an open, boundless love. "I made you a promise once, on the Black Mesa, to get you out of that cage, not to let that bastard marry you. I hope I kept it." Amelia's eyes welled with tears, a radiant smile gracing her lips. "You kept it, Caleb Thorne, and more. You fought for my life, for my freedom, and for a future I never dared to dream of. Now," Caleb continued, "I ask you for another promise. To be my wife. Not out of force or desperation, but out of a love that has defied everything. To build a life, a family, a legacy on this land together, forever." Amelia didn't hesitate. My heart has been your wife since the day you risked your life for mine, Caleb. Yes. Always, yes. Their wedding was a joyous celebration, held on the sweeping plains of the Lazy V. It was attended by their loyal allies Grizz, now a proud patriarch, Silas and Jedediah, the old prospectors, their eyes filled with content satisfaction, Sarah, the schoolteacher, her face beaming. It was a testament to the power of their enduring love and the triumph of justice over tyranny. Years later, Caleb and Amelia stood on the highest ridge of the Lazy V, overlooking the vast, thriving ranch. Their children, a son with Caleb's stormy eyes and Amelia's fiery spirit, a daughter with her mother's courage and her father's quiet strength, rode ponies in the distance, laughing freely. The Lazy V was no longer just a ranch, it was a symbol, a home where honesty, hard work, and love flourished. The West was still wild, and new challenges always lay ahead. But in the heart of that unforgiving land, the story of a woman's desperate plea from an iron cage and a white cowboy's promise that saved her had become a cherished legend. Their love story, a true wild cowboy tale, echoed through the canyons, reminding all who heard it that courage, integrity, and a love fought for fiercely could indeed pave the way for a brighter horizon, where promises were kept and freedom, once a distant dream, was a living, breathing reality.